Enter your attendee ID or the numeric meeting password followed by pound.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. My name is Samantha Peterson. I'm Mayor Pro Tem, so I'll be running the meeting in Bruce's absence tonight. We'll start with a roll call. We've got EJ Bell online. EJ, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha. Thank you.
Just an FYI, I'm driving. I might come in and out.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for calling in, EJ. Jim Kane?
Present.
David Fisher? Present. Trevor Dursky?
Present.
And Samantha Peterson, present. We also have Teresa Ross-Schaefer on the phone calling in, and she's participating by phone by council request tonight. Okay, so first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. And as Sandy and I were reviewing this tonight, I think it makes sense to move item number 6, which is a resolution approving a minor boundary change just after the consent agenda, but before the reports, if that's okay with you all. Sounds all right. Okay. Can I make that
It's going to be
motion?
5,
Yes,
and in the reports will be 6.
yes. Okay,
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
all right, we'll do a roll call. Jim Kane,
Aye.
David Fisher,
Aye.
Trevor Dursky.
Aye.
EJ Bell,
Aye.
and Samantha Peterson, aye. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposed budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. So I'll open the public hearing now. And first, Sandy Fowler, Interim City Administrator, is going to make a presentation regarding the budget as the notice was published. So she's going to walk through a PowerPoint presentation, and then at the end of that, then we'll ask Teresa if she has anything to add, and we'll kind of go that way. So I'll let you take the floor, Sandy.
Great, thank you. Again, Sandy Fowler, I'm the interim city administrator, and I'm happy to share with you the budget prepared by Teresa Rotscheifer and myself for your review tonight. The budget as presented by the Department of Management was published in the newspaper as required, and this is the public hearing for that. I'll make this presentation, and then as the Mayor Pro Tem stated, the public will then be invited to make any comments to the council. I'm running it from far away, so we'll see how this works. These are just some introductory slides to share. A reminder that we are online tonight, so this is being broadcast live on YouTube. It will be also up for rebroadcast. For those of you watching on the video, we know that the presentation is mostly unlikely to readable to you. The presentation is online at the same place that the minutes and the agenda are posted on the city's website. So you can look at the actual presentation, be able to read the words and the numbers online as well. So I encourage you to do so because you won't be able to see them online. This is just a quick list of the city staff that are the first list was the mayor and city council, as you see in front of you. And then this is the city staff, including me as interim city administrator, but then we have deputy clerk. Lynch Dallas serves as our city attorney, the fire chief, our public works staff, library director, and building official make up the staff of the city. Starting out with just property valuations, this is kind of where city budgets are formed in the state of Iowa. This is a slide of a fairly busy slide, but it's trying to give you just a 5-year history ending in today about the 100% valuation by class. I think it's important for the city council to understand what the full valuation, this is, as you can see, we only have 4 classifications now due to changes at the state level, removing multi-residential and utilities, the form, what they call those classifications, and they're still here so that you can see where things were, and obviously they're changing. And then we don't have industrial property per se in classification. It's all residential, ag, commercial, or gas and electric. This next slide is a little bit more understanding for you to picture those last 2 years, last year to this year. This is full valuation. You'll see this difference very quickly about valuation, full valuation. This is when you see an assessed value of your home or your business or the business property, your commercial property. The city of Atkins is clearly growing a lot. So this is valuation by class. And you'll see the difference on the next slide. With TIF, with the tax increment financing, those valuations are being captured by TIF, but this is total valuation. Residential has grown by 18%, ag 27%, commercial 60%. You don't have a ton of commercial, so when General Dollar finally came online, you see this big jump. And what I'm going to show you later is what the impact of commercial industrial property values do as compared to residential. So the next one is with TIF. This is an even larger number because a large piece of value in Atkins is held by TIF, and you see those dollars coming back to the city through the budget and through other discussions we've had even in the time that I've been here. And again, this is a more interesting slide to me to show those comparisons. With TIF, you've seen a 20% increase. So the idea that Atkins is, you're going to see when we talk about taxable valuation that the story is very different. But a lot of this value is that statewide assessment that was done. So values across the state were reassessed, and you saw this big growth. But this is even bigger than that. This is new housing coming online. This is showing the value of actual new values in your town. And this is significant. I think if you saw presentations from other cities, you would see, I think Center Point mentioned to us the day, 6 or 7%. I'm from Cedar Rapids. Historically, we were glad to have 2%. So, the numbers are much bigger. But at the end of the day, this is terrific growth for a community when you're looking at trying to fund the services of a city. This is the story. This starts the story of where does that valuation go, because it certainly disappears. And this is rollback. I wish I could explain to you rollback. I can't. There's a formula at the state level that is determined, that comes forward and says how much of those assessed values that people see on their assessments, their home business assessments, how much of that is taxable. So that 8%, or so from 54% last year to 46%, that's the amount of your assessed value that actually is taxed. So when we set a tax levy, only this percentage of your actual value is taxed. So that took away a lot of the growth that we saw in those previous slides. So I don't want you to think that there isn't growth, because there's tremendous growth, but the rollback took away a lot of that growth when we started talking about what part of that value is actually taxable. So, and then the other part that's important to note is, so residential values, your entire residence is taxed at that rollback rate. 46% of your valuation is taxed. Whereas commercial, you see that slide, the asterisk that says 90%, industrial, commercial, 90%. The first $150,000 is rolled back to 46, and then anything over $150,000 is taxed at that 90%. Historically, in the state of Iowa, commercial industrial was taxed at 100%. And that's a huge ability for tax. That's a lot of the funds that were coming into cities. That's why cities that have commercial industrial typically are able to have lower residential tax rates, because those commercial and industrial rates take a lot of the brunt away. The state is changing that. And if you follow that, they did do a replacement essentially for a while, and then that phases out as well. So you'll see that to have your tax base grow, residential is a lot harder to show that growth than if you try to encourage commercial industrial growth within your community. This is the levy rate that was published. We had the public hearing on that on April 9th. Starts with that consolidated general fund that was capped by the legislature at 8.235. Liability, property, and self-insurance, FICA and IPERS, and other employee benefits are those three areas where we have general fund expenses, and the state legislature allows us to have special levy rates to pay for those within those certain areas. And then finally, debt service. And so you get to that final rate of 12.2115. Impossible to read. I apologize for this slide. You'll have to go online and look at it really close. But it's always a good idea, and I've seen that you've done this in the past, where you compare the city's proposed tax rate of that 12.21 to other cities in the population of 2004 to 2860. And I made it black, the writing black, so you can see where we're at from the lowest in the first column to the highest at the bottom. So even with that 21.21, just over mid-range of the cities of 2000. What's important, I think, for the council to note here is that I went back and looked at previous tax rates. And in 2021, the tax rate was low. It was at $8 and something. And then it went to 10 to 12 to 12, and now we're 12.21. That is showing the pre-levy for the eventual bonding for the fire station. So that amount is already on the taxes. So as we talk about that value of needing to pay the debt service for a future fire station, that's included in this because of the pre-levy. So when we talk about what the levy would need to bear for the bond issue for the fire station, it is already in there. So we'll talk about that more as that project comes up to the council. It's relevant though, because for the council meeting that was the last meeting we had, where you had to vote on that pre-levy, it's important for you to know that you were committing to dollars that were in the budget last year and again this year. And it's not one more jump after that. I thought that's important to understand. So now let's get into the departments of the city. And we're using terms that the state government uses. So I apologize in advance that you kind of have to follow along with the states. We need to show some synergy with the state budget reporting system for consistency with them. And then I also try to put it in layperson's terms so that we understand what we're both talking about. In this case, they call general government are things that are like administration of the government. And then we split out a couple of other general fund items. So this is very simply the legislative branch, the city council. And then the next one is this busier slide is administration. And so I tried to put quite a bit of information on this slide to give you a really good overview of what in the last 8 weeks of me working with you, what we picture the city government looking like in the next 15 months. So, in governments, you're always working on a couple of budgets at a time. We're closing the last budget with audit. We're working in the current budget and we're setting next year's budget. And so you picture this budget. I always said you start in January and you're always 18 months out, which is tough. And so in this case, it's particularly tough because we're promoting a change of what the current FTEs and full-time equivalents. I think that term was used differently here, but I'm trying to correct that we can talk about positions, which would be people in jobs, and but so many of the employees here are part-time that it's neat. We can't talk about FTEs if you're not working a 40-hour week essentially or salaried. So I have converted, and I thought that was important to know because you can't say there's 3 people, there are 3 FTEs, for example, 3 FTEs in the library because they're all 3 part-time. And so that's a misnomer to say that there's not people working 120 hours in the library every week. That's not accurate. So I thought it was important to also note, because of the way we split our employees' time between a number of areas that have different funding sources, to also try to do that. So I tried my best to break that out. Not all of it is terribly important when it comes to the budget in the sense that it comes from the same place, but it is important when you want to try to figure out what the cost of services are. If you don't have this service, what would it cost you? You have to know how much FTEs are working in that area. So anyway, the current FTEs in the what I would call the city administrator's office is 2.25. Right now you have a position that's vacant of a full-time administrator. I am a contract employee and working in that. The question was, where's the money that's paying me? It comes out essentially of those salaries because those positions are vacant. But we aren't creating a position that's a contract position. That's not a long-term plan. So, so that's how the money kind of is fungible in there. So you have one full-time administrator, and you may have some authorization funds, but this is the practical matter of what the current staffing is. 0.75 FTEs of a deputy clerk. Amy Breeze next to me is working 30 hours a week, and that's at 0.75. And then we've had former city clerk Dick Lang working with us, gratefully working for us, 0.5. So about 20 hours a week. And as a temporary office person, my proposal to the city council was to have 3.5 FTEs, one full-time administrator, one full-time city clerk. I would put /finance officer. Generally, that's the role of the city clerk in the state of Iowa, is that they become that finance officer. And then again, the FTE, so 0.75 FTE of deputy clerk, and then 0.75 of utility billing clerk. That was a comment I had made. We have 800 utility billing customers. We absolutely are putting utility bills out every month. We are not doing all of the work required, and even as noted in the audits that have been done, to address delinquent accounts, certainly not efficiencies, those kinds of things. And that's what that position should be doing. So even though we're doing some of that work, we aren't doing all of that work. And so that 3.5 FTEs is what is in the FY25 budget. The other items on here, training and dues, that's what the professional dues and training that we expect all of these professionals to be provided. The consulting professional services, $50,000 for the city attorney for Lynch Dallas, and then audit accounting, both services that we're kind of utilizing now, although I would, the contract that we have underway with ESG is not really accounted for in here in the essence that the proposed staffing should take care of those issues, and we shouldn't need contract help once we've caught up and hired the appropriate staff. The audit there is for literally the audit that's done, and we typically have done it with the state auditor. My margins aren't good here. Building and maintenance utilities, that's $23,000. And then finally, the IT computer services. The kind of current things are annual support of software IT services, which I have to say are very impressive. It's kept me functional in this first couple of months that we have offsite IT services. It is great to have that service contracted. You can't provide those on site anymore with existing staff to ensure proper backups in times of disaster, but also the hazards related to what's the word I'm looking for? Hackers. It's very real for cities, very real, and I'm impressed that the city has some really good things in place for making sure that people don't get into our system that shouldn't be there. The one that I have added, a line item to add a document management system, I find, again, in my short time here, that is something that is woefully missing, is the technology required to keep the documents of this city in order. The things that come to you, bills and payroll, all that kind of stuff, all of the documents of the city council. That's the job typically of the city clerk to handle correspondence of the city, but also all the resolutions and ordinances and being able to track the work of the council and the city contracts. There are things that it's very hard to put your hands on right now. And with the council blessing, I would even propose that we start this before July 1, knowing that we could find money in current year budget to get us going. This would be a software system that would need to be bid. We would get proposals and including how to get the information today into a system like that. But I am just certain that it is a piece that you would be grateful for very quickly to have that information, including having more information online so that folks who want to come in and look at the resolution that was passed. I mean, that's just something that should be available to the public and can be, but not today based on the technology that we have available to us. The next slide, I stuck this slide in here just because I knew we were going to be talking about staffing and I wanted it in context. You know how the staffing of the cities, you have the office staff that I just did, and then the other staffing that we have outside of library and fire that we'll talk about in a second, but this is that general government staffing. Right now we have 3 FTEs serving what I call utilities, public works, parks. But I think it's important to understand how those staffing is broken down. So on the left-hand column is the current. So no one gets a full FTE. It's broke down, public works and roads is 0.7, parks is 0.8, wastewater sewer is 0.6, water is 0.9. The proposed is to add one position to 4, and then you'll see the breakdown there of how that staff person would be split up among the 4 areas. And that those FTEs are important. That's how the salaries and benefits, the entire cost of that person is split between the different funding sources. And just as a reminder, public works and roads that first line is here is typically paid by road use tax. We'll talk about that when we get there. Parks is general fund, wastewater, sewer, and water, both from rates that are paid through your utility billing. And that's why the split is necessary, is to show how those are split up. The comment at the bottom is that the expenses of those individuals, like the equipment they use, the vehicles, that kind of stuff this year. Just a few weeks ago, we bought a mower that was approved in FY24 budget. It is usually split 3 ways. So between wastewater, sewer, and road use tax. And that's how we've shown a couple of things within this budget as well, is to just split those equally into those enterprise funds. So now public safety is all in the general fund. So what that means is that the revenues come directly from property taxes. The first one is the Sheriff's Department. I know I've talked to the council about we're very lucky as a city to have the Sheriff's Department providing law enforcement services on our behalf. I think this is a very strongly recommend that we stick with this as long as we possibly can. Having a police department is just a very expensive operation with a lot of liability, and you need a bigger operation than this to maintain that coverage, the 24/7, the training, all the liability that goes with it. I had talked to the sheriff as we developed this budget. What the city is, my understanding, the city of Atkins is intending to pay for the full cost of one deputy. That was kind of the cost that they're going for. It could be anywhere 80 to 120. They have not billed us that much in FY24. We left it at $80,000. I think that's a conversation that we continue to have with the Sheriff's Department, is how does the city of Atkins support the Sheriff's Department, their training, and for the city to continue to get the benefits of the professionalism of the Benton County Sheriff. The fire department is next. Chief Reynoldsburg is driving back from seeing the fire truck that was being repaired. So he was not able to join us tonight, but you saw a great presentation, I think, from him on our very first work session. The budget for the fire department is somewhat less than last year. If you remember, they have 2 fairly large pieces of equipment that you just approved for FY24. One was a vehicle, the big truck that will be equipped for them, that they're getting outfitted, and then also some medical equipment, that chest compression equipment. So with those capital expenses out of the way, this is a pretty traditional budget for them. Again, it comes from both property taxes and a $40,000 donation from the Rural Fire Service. And that was, I talked a little bit about from when we talked about the fire station project. Animal control is our support of the Humane Society when we have an issue come up in the community, not a big expense, obviously. And then building inspections, we put a little bit of funding in there for our Jerry Michaels to come in and do building inspections as we do new construction typically, but also decks and things like that. That is probably an area that we will see a change. I don't know how much longer he is interested in doing the work, and so we're looking, we're already exploring some ways to. It's another area, kind of like the Sheriff's Department, that.
Well, that's offset a lot by our building fees, though, isn't it?
A little bit, but those are salaries that come in.
That all comes off there whenever, because we charge.
You'll see it. You'll see the money come in a different place, but yeah, in what that pays for. You're right. This is what's coming out of the general fund. Right. I expect we're going to need to figure out how to contract these services another way. It's a very specialized field. I think probably we don't appreciate just how knowledgeable these people have to be about all of the trades to work with a city like ours. And I think this is going to be a tough role to fill. But I think a lot of small cities in the area are in the same boat. So we've talked about how we can band together a little bit and see if there's a way to find find the right individual who will help us. Because you also have to be really timely for developers. You know, when they're ready for inspection, you kind of want to be able to be there and providing it. So that's something that's to come. So you'll see the revenues at the bottom there, the township revenues, that's the fire service. I think that miscellaneous are some of those building fees that we were just talking about. I don't know if that's completely all of them. So next, the other two general fund departments are library and parks. Culture and recreation is what you'll see it called by the Department of Management at the state level. The slide shows the general expenses for those two areas that don't really lump together like that. Doesn't really matter. You'll just see that on the state report. Revenues for the library, these are the four areas that are specific to the library. Benton County Lost, Benton County Library Fund, and Enrich Iowa are all areas that we estimate a little bit about what those revenues will come from those specialized sources. The balance of the library as well as the Parks Department all come from the general fund levy. I have that asterisk at the bottom. It's just important that those numbers won't match the state report. So we put this asterisk that says, because of that special levy for employee benefits that I mentioned at the beginning, it all doesn't come out of the general fund. It comes from those different areas. So the numbers, if you try to compare it to the state report or what's published, it just looks a little different. So we like to call that out. Here's the library budget. And again, you got a presentation from one of the library board members during the work session. This is very almost identical to what they had suggested at that meeting as well. 3 part-time employees. I wasn't able to completely figure out what FTE that is because of the pay rates and that kind of stuff, but we will figure that out just so that we can compare it for future years. But this was a very status quo budget, if you remember. Moving a little bit of funds around based on their priorities. The summer reading program, maker space, some equipment and furniture that they were looking for, that kind of thing. So again, very status quo. Parks. Here's the total parks budget. We have 1.1 FTEs in this budget. We use the full-time staff and also 1 to 2 part-time employees that come in and help us with mowing in the summer. And then there's probably a little bit of that for snow plowing in the winter as well. It's generally all salaries and benefits. That's the bulk of this, with the exception of this project at the end. There's a line item, just the only really project here is a couple of lines on building pavilion repair and maintenance. The 2, is my understanding, is some repair that needs to be done to the pavilion and making a decision on what needs to be invested in that building as a repair when it might be time, it might be at its end of useful life for some purpose, but how do you make it really functional as long as it's still up? The other is to try to replace some doors and windows for functionality of the old water tower that is used for storage now. And there's some security and wanting to keep that building secure and watertight and things like that, that is in that $45,000. The last project is on here, the capital improvement project, PCC Priority 7. You'll see the other 6 projects elsewhere in the budget. This is from the Snyder's project report that we looked at during the budget work session. This is what I think was always called as the pond inlet, and it's this project. So I think there was damage due to some water overflow, and we took some pictures to give you an idea of what we were. This is one where it's expensive. It's $87,000, but it's not getting better. And this would be a contracted piece of work. It's and is shown in the budget today to try to get done in FY25. Public Works, this is, I'm going to go through this a little bit. This is, again, the revenues that you see at the bottom is road use tax. This is a conservative estimate that we made. Of course, all these revenues aren't set by the state before you have to set your budget. So your best guess. This is conservative in the sense that it's lower than we expect to get. I think it will be higher than this. I think even the current year is a little bit higher than this based on what we see projected for FY24. And I'll start here because of road use tax, but this, my comments are going to be for both this and the enterprise funds of water and sewer. And it's my opinion that the city needs to develop a long-term financial plan. It is very difficult to balance the budget year to year based on the needs of the community. I think probably for a long time, when you don't have large infrastructure like a water plant, like a wastewater plant, and then more and more roadways, including those inner city, the core of the city roads of chip seal that require a lot of maintenance. You see that $100,000 is annual maintenance of chip seal, crack sealing, and striping. Most of that is the chip seal. I'm going to bring to you in the next meeting or two the road use or the streets plan for the next year. LL Pelling was out developing that for us, and we're needing to chip seal full roadway widths in the next year, and it's a normal progress. It's that kind of the annual and then progressive maintenance of those kinds of roadways. And then you're going to see in this budget as well that major projects, street repair priorities 1 through 6, $152,300. And I have some pictures of that in here as well. I'll skip to them a little bit, but it's this kind of stuff. So these are roadways and street projects that are have failed. And you saw those in your budget last year. You chose not to fund them. The price of concrete has nearly doubled in that time, and so the project cost of this has nearly doubled. I think it was $76,000 last year. It's $152,000 this year. It's not getting cheaper. It won't get cheaper. It might not grow. Hopefully, I can't imagine it doubling again. But these are projects that have to be done, or you start having worse and worse failures. At this point, they're probably considered maintenance repairs. At some point, you end up having to replace streets, and that gets very, very expensive. So, and these were recommendations by our engineer, Snyder, to make those repairs when they're in this condition. And so they gave us the price for if you do them now. My comments, though, are about this long-term financial plan. Road use tax, the rates for water and sewer should be set to cover maintenance and those annual and long-term project costs. It's I think very difficult to do that without a long-term financial plan that helps you use debt. Where one of the comments that the financial services advisor gave me today was that a city like ours bonds every 3 years. And so you figure out what those large projects that you should pay over time, instead of having taxes or road use tax pay them for this year, you should be paying for them so that multiple years you get the benefit of a long-term fix. Concrete streets are supposed to last 50 years. Very well-built concrete streets should last 50 years. And so you shouldn't pay for them all in 1 year. And in Atkins, like most cities, the developer actually pays that first cost. And so you don't want any expenses. You're going to have some, but you want, they should be long-term fixes, and they're too expensive to pay in 1 year. So you should bond for them over time, and then your rates of all these should be paying for that debt service for your loan payments, essentially. And it would be a much easier way to balance the budget, and you would also be able to have a long-term vision of what operations maintenance costs are, how much you should be paying on major projects, and then how much money should you be putting in reserve for the bad thing that happens, whether that's a disaster or whether something fails prematurely, whether the city has something that comes up that you just want to be able to take advantage of. And those things are completely possible for the city of Atkins. We do need to get a handle on it, and it's going to take a little bit of time to put that policy in place. And in the interim, we have a budget that feels fairly uncomfortable because it is heavy compared to the revenues. Would I say that you shouldn't do the $152,000 worth of major projects because the budget is, because it's, out of whack? No, I think it's going to get more expensive. I think that we keep on going as proposed here and pledge this year to get that financing in place so that you can see the long-term solvency of how to get these projects done over time. How do you pay for them over time? And take advantage of these funds and leverage road use rates, property taxes against debt in order to pay for bigger things in the time that you actually get the benefit of those things. It's kind of what we're doing now would be like buying your house in 1 year. You're going to live in your house for 40 years or something, and typically you can't do it, and neither can we. So I think that's what you're really seeing here. These are the street projects we went through. There's a number of them. If you went back to your capital improvement plan, the Snyder did prioritize these for us. Worst first. Which ones do we get the most benefit out of tackling first, and most critical projects. They've been on the list for a couple of years now. There are many more. If you live on Cardinal Avenue, none of your projects are on the list. So if we get these done on the list, if you're on Cardinal Avenue, you'll see the same thing where the manhole covers, the intakes are, or the manhole box outs are failing. And it's important to get those things fixed before they, get water inside. That's why they do the crack sealing, so they don't get a lot of water in there and ruin the street as a whole. But this, I think, is a great start. We, from budget work session to now, there were a couple of things that we took off just because it was, you can't do everything, and the budget just wouldn't bear it. But a couple of those expensive ones are at the top, but you're going to see why. So these are, I had staff go out and take some snapshots just so we could take a look at these. This is where, again, if you let them go, they're going to get worse, and the project will get bigger because everywhere there's cracks, you'll see that the water, rainfall, all of those things are going to get underneath that and break it up even more. These are those box outs, the ones those are intakes. Versus the ones that are kind of in the middle of the street. And then on the right, the sidewalk crossing is just right outside. I'd be so curious if you think that looks bad. It's bad. And I'll tell you why. Mostly because I know a lot about ADA, because my experience is, and you certainly have folks here in town. I always say everyone needs Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, whether it's a stroller, whether you don't have to be in a wheelchair to really appreciate this. You can be a runner, a runner that doesn't pick up her feet like me, to need curb cuts. But you certainly have residents who use these. What is here is that you'll see that great curb cut on the right with the red panel that looks compliant. I think it may be. The problem is it goes to nowhere. So you have a striping that goes across the street and then isn't received by anyone. So if you're in a mobility device, it's not good to get into the street and then not be able to go anywhere. And so that is absolutely not compliant with federal code. The crosswalk shouldn't be there, frankly, but it is, and that makes it even kind of worse in the sense that it's acting like you're safe there, and that there's a place for you to be received on the other side if you're in a mobility device, but in fact you're not. So that's why do a little ADA knowledge sharing. It really is good for community it meets a lot of people's needs: strollers, runners, wheelchairs, certainly. The next solid waste collection is also in the general fund because it is a contracted service, not an enterprise like in some cities. So the revenues are straight up ratepayers that come in, and then the budget is what we pay both waste management for their contract with us, and then the landfill cost for the tipping fees when they go there. The one thing I did want to share about the community cleanup, we put a $5,000 line item in this category. A concept that we're working on. I know the community has had cleanups in the past that it's a Saturday and you can bring your stuff in, and we do all the sorting and try to recycle some stuff. I have talked to both the environmental staff member at ECOG, the East Central Iowa Council of Governments, but also to the Benton County landfill about a way to promote both of their services through this community cleanup that I think would be a better service to the residents and also benefit those other two areas. The concept generally is that we would send out kind of a voucher or a coupon with the address. Each rate customer would get a flyer that allows them to go to the landfill, take their own stuff. What I found out was that if you're already taking your stuff, in some communities, if I don't have a truck, none of this helps me. Your Saturday thing, this idea won't help. But you already having people do that. And as a community, I see a lot of community pride and helpful neighbors. So if you have a truck and I don't, it's probably likely that you'll help me take my stuff in. What I understand about the Benton County landfill is that they have improved their residential drop-off. You don't have to drive to the actual landfill part anymore. It's kind of a dumpster system, and they want to promote that. They want to make sure that people know if you want to clean out your basement or the garage, load up your personal vehicle, take it out there, and it's very easy to drop off now. What this would do is you get one free in this first week of October, was that they were talking about at the landfill. They're open on Saturday, so it'd be like Monday to Saturday. You'd have the whole week, not just one day. If you can get off early on Wednesday and go do it. And then you get exposed to how you drop off things. And I think that once people do go try to drop off things, they realize it's a lot easier than you think. And so you're able to get that debris and things out of the community, which is a benefit to the community. What the ECOG people are saying is that they want to help us devise the flyer to make sure that people know how to recycle glass, how to do batteries that are really harmful to landfills. That's where landfill fires start, is from these batteries, and how to store them in your house until you could take them in and recycle. If you have tires or appliances that have an extra cost, we'd advertise that you can pay that on your own, but this would allow the city to support the community to utilize those services, and hopefully kind of promote a year-round cleanup in that once we'll teach you to fish, to be able to go and experience using the landfill and realize that it's a pretty easy thing to do. But we can talk more about that at council, but that was one idea that I thought would be a good service to provide the community for. I think it's been 10,000 in the past, but we think we can do it for actually less than that, because the cost had to have been salaries before. Essentially, it's an all-day event. The next piece is community betterment and economic development. The community betterment is the city's support of watermelon days through purchase of fireworks and dumpsters. So that's in there, and then the rest of that entire budget is related to development. So engineering costs, we have our engineers review even what you have later on your agenda, the boundary changes, plats, lot splits, all those kinds of things. And this is all part of those expenses. The next department, water department, our revenues all come from water sales revenue, sales tax, which is invisible, comes in the same exact way. Late fees, which we'll need to talk soon, I think, about delinquent accounts, the policies of the city. As I've evaluated, been here a couple months, there are some policies that do make for some gross inefficiencies within the office, and aren't really serving the community very well as well. If we're charging people that many late fees, it's a problem that isn't serving the community either. The expenditures are, just the cost of operating is what I tried to break out. Personnel costs, operating costs, that's insurance and engineering. Utilities, that's the power that it takes to run the water plant. chemicals, and then you see that water excise tax, that's paying back the state the taxes that we collected. The maintenance projects on the right, we want to replace 3 water hydrants each year. We're in the process of getting ready to do that again this spring, and this will be for next spring. The generator for well number 2, which is by the old water plant. I look for Todd to nod at me. This is so that just like the other Monday when the power went off, if it didn't come back on when ITC flipped the switch, we want a generator sitting there so that we don't have concern with water supply. The next one is the generator transfer switch. We do have a generator on the water plant, but we couldn't switch it on the other day either. So the water plant was sitting there waiting for the power to come back on, because you have to manually switch it over now, and it probably should be done by an electrician. This switch for $15,000 would make, just like in any building that you're in, when the power goes off, it blinks for a second, it comes back on. It'd be like that, and that's honestly how the water tower should work. If you've ever been in a building that has a backup generator, that's how those work. The lead and copper service line program, we talked about that a little bit. That's going to be coming forward. I have a proposal from Snyder for that. That is due from the federal government in October, so it's not really these are all very critical, I think, projects that don't have a lot of leeway. That final one is water tower maintenance. Again, that's the pared down maintenance that we think is required immediately, not waiting for a full water tower painting and that kind of thing. This is work that needs to be done now. The next one is that new water tower planning, $150,000. We put it in there as a line item because that's what we should do in FY25. I'm not sure whether it was also in last year's budget. So, Snyder has in our capital improvement plan a pretty sequenced event of how to get that next water tower built. It will take a number of years and a lot of planning, but you have to get started. So that's why it's in the budget, to remind us that we should get started with that planning. It's not going to go away. So it felt wrong not to include something. It's a number that you could certainly spend in a year if you wanted to, not even be aggressive. I think just kind of responsible. You wouldn't have to spend that much necessarily. It's about there's a lot of planning that needs to go into it, and we can work with Snyder on what that looks like. I understand you had a proposal. Nick, I think, walked you through that last fall. I saw that presentation. So employees for water department is 1.05 in the projected budget. Wastewater, this is your sewer plant. Revenues come from rates, the debt-free revenues at $45, and then sewer connection fees for new construction. Again, the operating costs, personnel, operating, insurance and engineering, those kind of every day, every year expenses. Utilities, the same thing. It costs a lot of power to run these plants, a lot of expenses. Just to give you a sense of what it costs to run the plant. The maintenance projects on this one, again, if you remember when Nick was here, we walked through some really critical projects that just really can't wait any longer. The first one is that sludge removal project. There's a significant timing issue with that, so we do need to get it approved in the budget this year so that we can work with the engineers to have the project go on at the right time. And that's because of the land application. It's about farming. So and if you remember in the CIP plan, it really does show that we're kind of at the end of useful life of we're at the 90% plus in most parts of that lagoon. Cleaning and televising, you've done phase 1 and 2. We've identified that CIP priority 1 as a result of those first 2 phases, which guarantees that there's a reason we're doing it. So I think continue with phase 3. Next year would be phase 4. I think that's critical work that needs to continue. That's truly at this point preventive, that ends up being in maintenance projects that are going to keep the system going very effectively. The inflow and infiltration projects, it's way easier to say I once you say the infill and the infiltration. Those are projects, unlike the next one that's identified, is that as they do this cleaning and televising, they discover things. underground, and they, some of them need to be fixed in the current year, and that's that funding. So those aren't identified projects. Those are making sure that we have the funding to do those projects that are critical as we find them, and you're already in there. CIP priority number one is literally the number one priority, I think, in the CIP budget. This one made me nervous. $120,000. It doesn't, I tell you guys, it doesn't, you know, the words just don't make it sound. Critical replacement of a sanitary main between manhole 40A and manhole 40. I think this was on the front, I think Todd, we talked about the front page of the Gazette one Sunday morning. The Cedar Rapids wastewater treatment plant had a $5 million critical. Their project, like this one, was $5 million just because everything's bigger in Cedar Rapids. Same thing, this is a corrosion issue where the pipe is corroded and needs replaced, and it's coming right outside the water plant.
Yeah.
And so it's out of the water plant, but it's wastewater, right? So this project, this needs to be completed this year. It's a critical, like I said, in Cedar Rapids, they're doing it off budget because they discovered it and it needs done. I kind of freaked out and goes, yeah, that's the same as ours. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And then you see that debt payments. Capital improvements, this is a line in the budget. As you know, this number hasn't been determined. This is the top number of the bond issuance for the fire station. Again, triggering that second pre-levy that we approved last time. Local option sales tax, you are familiar with, just a second, sorry, I should have brought this up with me. So on the left-hand side are the revenues, that's that 70%. These numbers have grown. I think some of the commercial development in town has certainly paid off, and you're seeing those sales taxes being generated in town. And I think when I look back at the budget, you know, it was considerably less than this. So those are great dollars coming in to the community. On the expenditure side, these are ones, they're obviously earmarked for those specific ones, and you'll see either throughout the year or next year, we'll see where those are specifically targeted for. Debt relief goes to debt payment, and you'll see that to make sure that we're paying as it's termed as property tax relief, and so that's how it's expended. The debt service funds, just to run through it, the first two debt issuances are paid for with TIF revenue, TIF 2015A and 2016A. The next one is that GO wastewater treatment is paid with sewer revenues and debt service from the property levy for debt service. The revenue wastewater debt, the next one, is fully paid by sewer revenue. And then the 2022A issuance is $10,000 with a lost, and the remaining is debt service. And let's see. And then the second, those last two are the pre-levies that were are in anticipation of the fire station, which is why we're getting in early and starting to pay off debt before we can incur it, which is a terrific way to buy down the cost of debt. So I wanted to walk you through that. Needed Teresa's help a little bit for that. And then there's just a couple of pie charts here in the back. This is trying to break down for you what the actual property tax only. So when you pay your property taxes and you have in this case, $100,000 house, this is kind of how the state does it. It shows each of those categories that we just went through that aren't exactly lined up with departments, so it's always a little odd, but that's the actual dollars of property tax. And then this is revenues, and where those revenues come, it kind of gets skewed because of that debt. So you kind of have to play the game as it's dealt. And then that pie that's coming out is the property tax piece, and the other parts are all fees for services, rates, other revenues coming in, and then this is expenditures, again, kind of skewed by the concept of debt that won't ever really look like that. It doesn't come out wholly like that. And then finally, fund balances. This is where I would remind you This is all the places that we have funds coming in. General fund special revenue is like those employee benefits and that kind of, the property tax or the property insurance taxes, TIF special revenue, the debt service that we just talked about, capital projects like the fire station, and then enterprise are those water, wastewater, road use tax areas, and then the total of all of those. Again, this is why this slide could easily make you a little hesitant. At the same time, this is the reason why we need to handle those expenses differently in the future to leverage borrowing in order to pay for large expenses and balance those large expenses against pay-as-you-go projects that the city should understand how they're funding, maintenance and operations versus projects that cost more but also last longer, and how we should pay for them over more time so that the taxpayer isn't burdened with them in any one year. There we go. Teresa, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. Well, just if I could add a little bit about this fund balance page. And specifically, if you, as council person, were to take a look at those actual state documents that Sandy gave you that we fill out for the budget, that has 3 years worth of fund balances. And so we have the re-estimated for the current year we're in right now, FY24. And then we have the FY23 that's based on the FY23 annual financial report that was filed with the state of Iowa. And, as I sat here, I'm not so overly confident that FY23 report that was filed with the state was totally correct on the balances at the end of the year on that FY23. Now, I can't say that definitively until I have an opportunity to work with the gentleman that's been trying to balance with the bank. And Sandy and I haven't talked about that for a little while. He was gone when I wanted to come in for a day and a half or so. And then I've been focused on getting cities to a point where they could all get their budget certified. So just know that I still am working on that. But even with the FY24 budget we're in right now, you have Sandy and I, quite frankly, really guessing on where you're going to end this budget in a couple months. And, I don't think neither she nor I would take it to the bank, so to speak, as that saying goes, on how those numbers really look. So when I look at the ending balance, I can't definitively tell you that that's where we're going to end up at the end of FY25. But what I can tell you is that you're obviously in the enterprise fund, you're obviously planning on spending about $500,000 more than you are taking in. So in that particular case, ignoring the beginning balance and ending balance, Sandy's idea for a long-term financial plan, I would recommend spending some money and working with Meg, is her name Maggie?
Yes.
Maggie? And really finalizing your cash flow and utility accounts. And in my experience, I would end up getting a utility cash flow debt analysis done that provided me like 5 years worth of actuals that matched the audit I had done the year I was in and the budget, and then 5 to 6 years out into the future. And it included debt, it included capital projects, it included where those capital projects were going to be an SRF loan, a revenue debt loan, whether it was going to pay-go project, however, and it was a plan, and then it also included the recommendation of what we needed to do with rate. And so I think just that document alone would be helpful for you as a council. I think in addition to that, then we get some sort of plan from Snyder or some other engineer, whoever you guys feel comfortable with, and they provide for you some sort of sewer, I was trying to think what we used to call them, but sewer or water 10-year maintenance plan or CIP plan for you. So it includes what your maintenance should be and what your project should be. And then that's what we use, or your department directors use, to help identify the projects we put in the cash flow. And we get on top of it or in front of it versus being reactionary. So I've got a couple of recommendations on that, a couple other recommendations. And then as I sat here and looked at those balances, Sandy, I'm going to have you tweak 2 transfer numbers even after we're done tonight. It doesn't change any totals. It doesn't change. They're both in the TIF transfer line. It doesn't change any of the documents that were publicized, but we need to make sure that that fund balance, I don't think I'd noticed that the fund balance for your debt service was $1,000 negative. That one cannot be negative when you go to certified tomorrow.
Sounds good.
So we need to change 2 numbers.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Otherwise, I think it's a pretty detailed budget that I think, based on the feedback I had received from council members, hopefully you feel more informed and more involved this year than you might have in the past.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, Sandy, for your presentation. It's time for public comment. So first, have there been any written comments submitted?
None. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And now if there's anybody here in the gallery that would like to make a public comment, we now have this podium. So you can stand and state your name and your address for the record and make any public comments that you like. Okay, hearing none, then we'll close the public hearing, and then I'll entertain a motion to adopt, a motion for a resolution to adopt the budget, and then we can discuss after we have a motion in a second.
Make a motion to adopt the budget for 2024, 2025.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so we can have discussion at this time. And feel free to chime in, EJ.
Sounds good.
Does anybody have any comments that you'd like to add? Jim, you good? Dave?
All I can say is this is not sustainable, the way we've got it. In order to adopt this type of a budget and continue on this type of spending, we're going to be broke in a real short period of time.
Trevor, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think we need, we need to get this financial plan put together. I don't know what the turnaround time is. I mean, obviously, this takes care of, I think, required staffing. I've done my own analysis in Atkins against what I consider to be our peer cities. In terms of wages, dollars in wages per person of population, wages as a percent of government revenue, wages as a percent of what I consider core government revenue. So backing out some certain extra things when I did the analysis, all those indicating somewhere around 170,000, 150 to 170,000 of additional wages Atkins could pay just to get to average. That's looking at Ely, Fairfax, Urbana, Van Horn, Marengo, Palo, Blairstown, Shellisburg. I know there's a view that we're already well staffed. My own analysis indicates the contrary.
Mine too.
And also when we consider a lot of these things that we're now paying exceptional rates for. So our engagement with ESG, right, is higher than what we should be paying on an annual basis for the same type of work, because we're having to rebuild things, to reconstruct things. We're paying for levels of seniority that we wouldn't normally have here and wouldn't need. So yeah, I think that's also evidence of a staffing concern. And then, so that's what we're doing in this year is we're getting healthy there. And then we're also tackling capital improvements that have been deferred and now are more expensive. I think what we need to understand is what this ongoing, with this ongoing and what the right cadence is for bond issues. And we really need to understand the financing position of the city in terms of debt usage, debt capacity. And
Trevor, just to add in there, our enterprise fund is about 3 times better than it has been for the last 2 years. We are moving forward on many of these, but up until 2020, our enterprise fund was directly going negative every year because they refused to raise the rates and were transferring out of the general fund. And that is unsustainable, but it was a council decision and it was what our staff had to live with. So this is the best budget I've seen since I've been on the council. And it's considerably better than the first budget that we were running into. And fund balances, as Teresa says, she was concerned about our ending fund balance because she didn't know what the beginning fund balance. We haven't known a beginning fund balance since the special audit for 2020. And we just got those results in February. So yeah, this is not where we need to be. It's not where we should be. But in my opinion, we're moving in a direction, and probably I'm not comfortable with the pace, but I don't know of a better pace at this point in time until we can get more information from the auditor and see how. I've been trying to track everything from the special audit up until today, and I'm seeing improvement, but until we can get our staffing levels up, we're just so far behind the 8 ball that I don't know how to get there any faster, honestly. I think contracting now and getting some added financial assistance in their short term, we're going to have to overpay and bring contract people in because we need the expertise, and we aren't going to be able to be in a position to hire that level. And I think short term, we need an extra level of expertise to get us into where our normal, like you said, we have to have a 5-10 year financial plan to see what is stable for this town and for this growth. And it hasn't happened. I mean, I can go back 10 years with you and see that it hasn't. I don't know what to tell you.
we've got almost every line where expenses exceed revenues.
Yes,
And that's the concern.
yes.
What I was trying to get to was I don't see in here any expense that's excessive.
No,
It's not warranted. That's not related to either maintenance or investment or improvement in the core operations of the city. There's no frills here.
no,
And
and
there's
there
a lot,
hasn't been.
there's a lot in the capital improvement plan that's not being addressed.
yes,
So but I think it is a valid concern of we can't do this every year.
no,
And so
you're right.
how are we going to finance this? And I think is heading into 25, we talked about this, Sandy, I think 25 is in my mind, I'm approaching it as this is the year, like the fiscal year of 2025. We're going to start to hit our base, and now we're building. You know, like maybe the first year in a while of normal city operation. Hopefully, it's very boring, and all the rancor is out, all the anger is out, and we're just getting things done, and we're getting back on track, and we can start talking about all the things I think people really would like to talk about, which is economic development, parks. What are we doing for the parks? What are we doing for the community and the people that live here? But to your point, Jim, if we don't know what current fund balances are, and so we can't really even,
Yeah.
to
So much
Teresa's
stuff has
point,
been
talk
transferred
about
around,
what
we
ending
can't-
fund balances are.
Yeah.
We've got to fix that.
Yeah.
It's not going to get better with
And
age.
it's not, unfortunately, it's nothing we can fix. You know, the state auditor is in there, he's monitoring and moving us, but he is the definitive until we get where we are, where we know, the special audit identified so many dollars that they couldn't account for. And that's where the fund balances come in. There was so much money that was not properly identified. And I don't know how, what I'm trying to say is that there was just so many questions in the bookkeeping and the way it was done that I've
We're
been totally
moving in the right
uncomfortable with it. And we
direction,
need to
I mean, we
have
need to-
some, that I think with Teresa getting, or with Sandy getting that accounting firm in here that's going to help us until we can get everything going there and moving. And I think at some point in time, we're just going to have to bite the bullet and declare this is a new line. I don't think we're ever going to be able to identify our fund balances per the problems that the audit identified, because we don't have, and we'll never get that level of accounting because it's in the past.
We will.
Yeah.
Well, we'll
I
have
think we're
we'll
working-
establish that.
And a little bit from what Teresa said, just that I think you're aware of, that ESG, the firm we've hired, is working on the things that she had talked about, that we're working on, the bank reconciliations. We will have that, and as I reported to you a week ago, I think, is that will be sooner than later. It won't take them long at all.
Yep.
And Trish, the principal in that firm, confirmed that today. She was in today working on it. So-
Well, and I want to say that we're happy to have them on board. I
Yeah.
don't want to be critical
No,
of in your efforts as well and your contributions, but I just want to, I think it's fair to note that we're into a position where we're at because previous investments haven't been made. And I mean, for my time here, I'm gonna act and I'm gonna support not doing that anymore and getting us back to normal function.
Thank you. EJ, do you have any comments that you'd like to add?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I would agree with many of the points that were made by previous council members. And I'd also just like to add that I'm very appreciative and grateful for Sandy and Teresa's leadership throughout this process. And grateful for the staff's involvement as well. And the council people or council members up here too. I think this year has been a lot different than the past couple of years, at least from my perspective in participating in this process. And it was really the leadership from Teresa and Sandy's that really made the difference in my opinion, and the participation of everybody. So I just want to thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote to adopt the resolution to approve this budget. Jim Kane,
Aye.
David Fisher,
Nay.
Trevor Dursky,
Aye.
EJ Bell,
Hey,
and Samantha Peterson, aye. Okay. The next item on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda, which includes the city council minutes for the special session on April 9th, as well as the regular session on April 9th, and the list of bills.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? All right, a second. I'll second. Okay, well, roll call vote. Jim Kane,
Aye.
David Fisher,
I thought we were gonna discuss this when we discuss the bill.
oh, yes, we can discuss. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, any discussion?
Does anybody have any questions from the council on any of the bills?
What's that? Are you asking the council or are you asking the?
I'm gonna ask a question if nobody else does.
Yeah, please do.
There's a $5,200 bill here for soccer room bathrooms.
Yeah, you want me to?
Sure.
That was an emergency repair that was made this spring in order to open the bathrooms for the season. There was a broken pump in, and we had to have an emergency work performed in order to open the bathrooms on time.
Okay,
And I've documented that within our invoicing system.
all right, I can't see that detail from here.
No, absolutely, you're right.
The other thing is an angle broom for $2,700.
That is a rental of a piece of equipment. Do I?
Angle broom, we run it to clean the right of ways and stuff. After snow, we clean rocks, sand, stuff out of right of ways, and intersections.
For the skid loader.
That was on the skid loader, we rented it.
One of the expenses of having cement streets instead of
And
chip seal.
Okay,
Any other discussion or questions? I apologize for skipping that
no,
part.
no, that's no big deal.
Okay, are we ready for a vote then? All right. Jim Kane, aye. David Fisher,
All right,
Trevor Dursky.
Aye.
EJ Bell,
Hey,
Samantha Peterson, aye. Okay, so we changed the order here. So the next item on the agenda is a resolution approving a minor boundary change to a lot known locally as 309 Second Avenue in Atkins. There was some information included in the packet.
Motion to approve the resolution.
second.
Okay, are there any questions or discussion?
There's just one thing, after reading the engineering report, I do agree with that.
Mhm.
I do think we need to put some sort of a time limit on combining those properties so we don't have a
think we
standalone
did.
property
It's in
there. I don't think the 30 days, I think we should go 60 or 90 just
It's
because
already
it's
under-
really tight. I don't think that there's going to be a problem, but
It was recommended. that we
yeah,
do 30
do a
days. Okay.
standalone. Like I said, 30 days, sometimes when you get into finances and things like that, if it's okay, if both parties are agreed to the 30, but I'd be willing to go 60 or 90 just to make sure that stipulation is in there, that it does become
My,
not a standalone.
my preference would be to leave it at 30 days, and if we don't make it, we'll come back to you. It is critical that we get it done.
Yep.
Mhm.
And it's already underway, so we're working.
Like I said,
Appreciate that, though.
Okay. I think we're ready for a vote. Jim Kane,
Aye.
David Fisher,
All right,
Trevor Dursky.
Aye.
EJ Bell,
aye.
and Samantha Peterson, aye. Okay, the next items are reports. Mayor's report, Bruce sent me a couple items to report on. The first one is he is attending a county conference board meeting tonight. So he's at a budget meeting up at the county. So that's where he is tonight. Second item is EMA training is available on May 4th. Council may contact City Hall if anyone's interested in participating in that. Third item is that we've started to remove diseased city trees with emerald ash borer. So that work has started, sounds like. And there are bids going out for the remainder of the city trees. Is there any additional comments from that perspective? Okay, sounds good. So that was from Bruce. Sandy?
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything to
Yeah,
add?
thank you.
Okay. Are there any council reports? Jim? Dave?
I attended the training for the typical city council trainings.
Part 3.
Trevor, do you have anything? Okay. EJ, do you have anything to add for council reports?
I just want to say real quick, clearly there's still some disagreement on the budget stuff. So we really need to come together and figure that out. Just so you know, Sandy.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. Any future agenda items to discuss or to add? Okay.
Yeah, we moved the drop deposit box out here. And I've had multiple citizens talk to me about it and voice their concerns about the moving of it, being able to get out of their car and have to come up to the building to actually get to the drop deposit. And there was no real communication. Can we take a look at that in the future to move that back out there?
Probably not. There was a real reason for that. The checks in the box, I was watching that, helped with the billing a few times. If it gets wet out there, it literally ruins the check because you can't read them and the bank wouldn't process them. And we tried, there was several different tries to try to waterproof that box
So
and we can't do it. So that's why it's under the eaves. We also looked at putting it.
You buy a new box. Buy a new box. I've gotten 5 phone calls on this and I'm on vacation. Whoever decided it should have told the council, move it back or get a new box.
I think we need to discuss it.
I'm just saying
at the
it.
next meeting, is what I'm saying.
We're gonna put that new box in the budget?
We actually.
Am I?
I know they.
Well,
I can't believe you guys passed that budget.
We considered putting it in the doorway or on the cement.
We need to talk about it, that's all. That's what I'm saying.
Mayor
now,
Pro Tem,
because I feel like-
I think you can't discuss this. This is for future items.
Oh,
You can't
okay.
discuss that
Okay.
one.
Put it on future, I will discuss it next. I'm good.
Okay. All right. We'll take public input now for items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anybody that would like to speak, come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Dennis Cashner, and I think the city,
Do you want to, Dennis?
sure, I'll go up there.
We got new name tags.
Might as
We're
well use
trying to. Trying
I think
Trying to add the
city
decorum
council
here.
needs to look at addressing the issues that are with the previous ATV golf cart. I know this is an ongoing issue. Somebody posted on Facebook that there was some safety issues tonight. I witnessed about a week ago, 4 young individuals driving a golf cart down Park Ridge, and then they proceeded to cut over and drive on the sidewalk when they found out there was a car behind them. I think that the state has changed the rules. So I think the city needs to review that and compare the two understand what goes on with an ATV versus golf carts and how they intermix, or somebody really gets hurt. So, I know when this city drew up those ordinances, there were no state laws involving the ATVs, and they've become popular and everything like that. And then last case scenario is whatever you establish, you're gonna have to decide how you're gonna enforce it. Because if you don't enforce it, it does no good. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Thanks, Dennis. Is there anybody else? Okay. The next regular council meeting will be held on May 14th at 6:30 PM here at City Hall. And with that, do I have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.